You may have heard that defense in Fear and Hunger 1 is a lie. That is to say, the defense stat itself does nothing, it's just a vague indicator of how good the armor is, and the armor actually works by applying a percent modifier to damage you take that you can't see. While in Termina, you can see that defense modifier. It's right there on most armors, so it's pretty simple, right? It just works the same way. But what about the instances where you increase your defense stat directly? The Hexen table has +2 defense and +2 magic defense. Marcoh's backstory lets him gain +2 defense. If you engrave a sigil of all-mer on your face, you get +3 defense, and Sylvian gives +3 magic defense. What does all that do? Well, effectively, it's the same as armor. The defense point itself does nothing, but it gives you a percent modifier to damage taken. Let's take a look at some of the code. Here's Marcoh's backstory. This is the part where you choose what stat to increase. For attack, it just gives you +2 attack. For defense, it does give you +2 defense, but it also adds these states: Marcoh_defense and defense +1. If we look further, we see the agility and HP also just add the stat directly, so it's just defense that works like this. Now if we go and look at those states, we can find what they do. Marcoh defense applies this parameter, physical damage times 95%. And we can find all the defense modifiers here. So that +1 defense is a 98% multiplier to fire, slashing, and blunt damage. Together that means Marcoh's backstory choice gives him basically 93% damage taken from physical damage. +1 defense is also what you get if you take +1 defense on the Hexen table, and +2 defense is if you have +1 defense and take one more on the Hexen table, and that's a 97% multiplier. Now if you took the extra defense as Marcoh, that counts as a +1, so you can take +1 and +1 again, which gets you to +3 for a 95% modifier. So with Marcoh, the maximum defense you can get is 2 95%, or basically 90%. That isn't nothing, though it is pretty small for losing the other stat increases you could have gotten instead. As for the magic defense on the table, one point will give you 97% otherworldly resistance, and the second point gives 95%. There's also a defense buff status effect from Goulash Plus. This multiplies your defense stat by 130%, and then multiplies blunt, slashing, piercing, and fire damage taken by 70%. And there's a Purifying Talisman that gives magic defense, multiplies otherworldly damage by 70%. Now for the engravings. The all-mer engraving will give an 85% multiplier to physical damage, equivalent to some decent armor like the best helmets in the game. The Sylvian engraving will give a 70% multiplier to otherworldly damage, twice as strong as the all-mer one, but only for the rarest damage type. I also want to mention, you'd think it would be good against the final bosses with all the magic they use, and I could give a full analysis, but to keep it short, basically a lot of the attacks they use are actually no element, and so can't be resisted. Otherworldly only defense against specifically the Heartless One's Soul Strike, Rare's Moon Scorch, and all of Logic's second phase attacks except Combustion. So really it's only good against specifically Logic's second phase, and it doesn't even do anything against the first phase. Now you might have noticed Marcoh's unique defense state and the all-mer engraving change SP parameter physical damage, while the other physical defenses are multipliers to 4 different damage types. There is a slight difference between these two. The physical damage parameter applies to any attack that is hit type physical attack, while the damage types apply to attacks given those elements. There's only a few attacks where there's a difference. The neighbor's suction tongue attack is resisted by the parameter but not by the elements, while combustion or pyromancy trick being used by an enemy is resisted with the fire element but isn't a physical attack. Asterisk and Soul Strike are physical attacks that deal otherworldly damage, so they can be resisted by either engraving. There might be more, I only quickly looked through them, but I'm pretty sure the difference doesn't matter much. Oh, and there's one last instance of a bonus to defense. If you skip Marcoh's backstory, you get +1 attack and +1 defense as an average of the two options there. In this case, the defense does literally nothing. Mirror forgot to add a state onto it, so that one just doesn't do anything.